Well, first, it's really important to me that you guys know a little bit about why you partner with me. So Helen DeVos Children's Hospital has been a lead agency or a sponsor of the injury prevention program for almost 20 years now. And so we've been able to help families in our community and beyond know how to use their car seats correctly. So I'm excited to partner with you guys to be able to give you some insight into how to do that correctly. We know that unintentional injury is the leading cause of death for kids. And of those unintentional injuries, more than 50% of them are related to motor vehicles. With that being said, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And today we're going to focus on the right way. When we talk about the different states, every state has different child passenger safety laws. When I look at law, it doesn't always equate the safest. So my preference in teaching is always to teach best practice, which is the golden standard. What's the safest way we can do this? If we follow the golden rule or best practice, we are going to equal or succeed each of the states that you are in. So rather than try to figure out what line we're at and how we have to change things, let's just do it the best from the beginning so we won't have to worry about making changes.
Great, wonderful.
To kind of give you a little summary page, I'm actually going to put a paper like this right in your glove box of the van. This will be everything that you need to know based on the age and stage of the child, so that if you don't remember everything from your training video, you can pull it out as reference and be able to see what's happening with each child.
That would be very good. Good resource.
So we're going to start with the itty bitties first. All kids who are 2 years old or younger need to face the back of the car. So anybody 2 or younger is going to face backwards. I want to dispel a couple of myths before we even get into why we're doing this. Okay? The biggest question I get from parents, from grandparents is, what about their legs? What do I do with their legs? Here's the most important thing you need to know. Kids are made to be flexible. They can bend their legs, they can flop their legs, they can pull them up to their shoulders. But what we know is that a bent leg will not break in a crash. However, if we're so worried about the leg that we just say, I'll just face the front of the car, their neck and spine are very susceptible to injury in a crash. So don't worry about what the appearance of their leg looks like. It's not uncomfortable for them. It is not a risk of injury. It is the safest way for kids to travel. Okay? Now, here's another little hint for you guys. This van belongs to you. This is your van. So I would encourage you to say, my van, my rules. So there are going to be some parents and families that you've encountered that maybe don't know that this is the safest way for their children to ride. Maybe they already have their child forward facing in their own vehicle. This would be an opportunity for you guys to say, hey, this is the safest way. And our goal at Shriners is to make sure that your child is as safe as they can be. So in our van, any child 2 or under rides facing the back of the car. Now, there's a lot of specifics for each stage of the car seat. And I don't want to overwhelm people in the training, but I want to make sure that you hit on those key points. And then again, reference the paper, because everything that you need will be in the column according to the age of that child that you'll need to focus on. Okay? So for rear facing, here's your 3 key things to think about. The position of the harness straps. For some of you who are kind of not really in the car seat world, it's the seatbelt part of the car seat, the piece that will go over the child to keep them in the car. Those straps must be lower than the height of the child's shoulder when it's coming out of the car seat. So in essence, you're going to have a strap that hits them on the shoulder, hits the top of their shoulder, and curls back down. That's very important for the absorption of any crash forces that could happen. We want to keep that child in the car seat. So when they're facing backwards, 2 years or younger, the strap height is very dependent on the shoulders of the child. It needs to be at or below the height of their shoulders. That's number 1. Number 2, when we put that child in the car seat, we need to make sure that the straps are tight. It is very, very common for those straps to be too loose. It's the most common misuse out there in the world of car seats. So we really want to make sure that that child is not going to be able to slide around, or worse yet, slide out of the car seat. So here's what we use. We use our thumb and our first finger as if we were going to do a little pinchy like this. Once you place the child in the car seat, you're going to take that thumb and first finger in a vertical motion right at their shoulder. Try to pinch the strap. So the car seat, the webbing part of it.
Okay.
Try to pinch it. If you can pinch it, you haven't tightened it enough.
Got it.
If your fingers just slide right off, perfect. That's how tight we want it.
Okay.
Now, Tom, you know those states you drive in the winter, are they warm?
Yeah.
No, they're very cold, aren't they? So again, no generational assumptions here, but grandmas and grandpas especially think that all kids should be wearing the big winter coat to stay warm. Guess what? When you put a child in a car seat, you take their coat off. We want that child protected with their body as close to the car seat as possible and as close to the straps. So you may want to add a couple of blankets into the van so that when you take the coat off of the child, you can cover them with a blanket to keep them warm.
Got it.
I think it's a great idea. Again, my van, my rules. That may be something parents have never heard before, and I would encourage you to make sure that you are using safe practices in the car seat.
Good information.
And the last piece about installing the kiddo in the car seat. So we've talked about the straps being at or below the height of the shoulders when they're facing backwards. We've talked about the pinch test to make sure you can't pinch the webbing. The final piece is that clip. There's a clip that buckles the two straps of the car seat together that has a perfect position. And that position is at the child's armpit height. It doesn't hang out by their belly button. It doesn't go up into their neck. It centers right across at the armpit height. That's called a chest clip. So if you can remember what it's called, place it in that position at the chest of the child. Those 3 keys to putting a child in the car seat correctly will very much dictate how well and how safely your child travels. Now, instead of focusing on how we're going to put it in the car, we're going to transition to the older kids now to talk about putting them in the car seats, because I feel like it's a lot easier to follow that way. And then when we go out to the van later, I'll demonstrate each separate part as well. Okay? So once a child is over the age of 2 and they have exceeded the minimums or maximums of the car seat, oh, that's another thing we should talk about on car seats is a lot of information. Every car seat label will tell you what you need to know. So if you have this paper as a reference, you also have all of the information on the side of the car seat label that will tell you, oh look, this one should be used facing backward with kids under 2. This one can be used with a kid who weighs this many pounds. This one can be used with a kid who's this many inches. Those are really helpful things, especially in the moment of being a little bit overwhelmed with how to do it.
Yeah.
Read the information on the car seat, okay?
Okay.
So most of the time when we get our kiddos who are over 2, they're going to face the front of the car. Not always. There are some kids who will ride rear facing longer, but once they're over 2 and they've hit those maximum rear facing limits, we are now going to transition to face the front of the car. They are still using a car seat that has buckles that we've just talked about with the rear facing seat, but they are going to face the front of the car. There is one major difference in the harnessing of a child who faces the front of the car. You are now going to have to look at where that shoulder strap comes and make it above the height of their shoulders. So there's more of an upward angle for the harness or the seatbelt type part of the car seat than if it is backwards facing. And all of that comes in with the distribution of crash forces. If you were to stop suddenly or to brake fast or to crash, Lord willing we don't, but if we would, the distribution of crash forces is very different based on the direction the child is facing. And we want their body to absorb it in the correct way and have the straps assist in that. So forward facing, the straps need to come from at or above the height of the child's shoulders. When we get outside, I'll be sure to point out to you the different heights of the straps and kind of make sure you're understanding with the doll. But if you think about that, forward facing, they're coming from above the height of the child's shoulders so that we've got room for our body to kind of absorb that force and not just snap our neck. If the strap was too low, all that would move forward is the child's spine and neck. That doesn't usually end well for the child. Two things stay the same. So now you don't have to learn anything new. When you're facing forward, using a car seat that has buckles, you're still going to practice the pinch test.
Okay.
You're still going to make sure that that clip is at armpit level. The only difference in harnessing is the position of the shoulder straps. Okay? So I want to review because, we don't want to go too far without reviewing. Babies who are 2 years old or younger are going to face backwards. They're going to have the straps be at or below the height of their shoulders. Kids who are over 2 are likely to be facing the front of the car, and those straps are going to come from above the height of their shoulders. It doesn't matter what direction they're facing. We're always going to make sure that we can't pinch the strap, so it's very snug. That chest clip is going to come right at the armpit level, and we are not wearing thick coats or snowsuits in the car seats. Do you have any questions, Tom?
So far, no.
All right. So it'll be a good challenge for you. Once we go out there, I'll probably ask you some questions.
Test.
I'll give you the test. Make all your employees learn, or your volunteers kind of feel like at ease a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now the biggest, or I would say the quickest transition that parents are likely to make is to take that 4 or 5-year-old kiddo and be like, oh, are we done with car seats yet? Can we put him in a booster? It's so much easier. I would again like to dispel a myth. It is not easier. It is actually much more difficult to keep a child safe in a booster seat versus a car seat. The difference between those two types of seats, a car seat can be facing backwards, can be facing forward, but it always has the straps that buckle, that secure the child in. A booster seat just uses the adult seatbelt over the child and boosts them up to try to make them taller and make them into an adult much quicker than they need to be. So those booster seats are really reserved for much older children. We want to keep kids in that 5-point harness, in the seatbelt webbing with the buckles, as long as possible. The car seat that I'll be providing for your van will harness a child all the way up to 65 pounds. That is an average 6-year-old. So there's no hurry to put them in a booster seat.
Yeah.
According to the guidelines that I'm going to be placing in your glove box, we do not want any child in a booster seat before the age of 5 or before the weight of 50 pounds. So we want to keep those kids as safe as we can. Remember, we're talking best practice.
Yes.
And that means we're not going to go to a booster seat until we have to. That seat will harness to 65 pounds. Let's do that.
Okay. Very good.
The booster seat, okay? Who, when, where, and how in the world do you do it? It is truly just a positioner. It is just making a child taller than they really are so that the vehicle seatbelt contacts them in the strong bones as if they were an adult. If you visualize a small child sitting in your van in the back seat with no assistive seating device, and they put that seatbelt on them, you know where it comes, right? Right across their face, way up high on their belly, and they just kind of look like that. With a booster seat, it raises them up so it lowers the position of the lap belt, so it will come across their strong hip bones. It also makes their back taller so that that shoulder belt will contact on the strong clavicle to make sure that if there was a crash, we would have strong portions of our body absorbing the force, not our little squishies or our face.
As in an adult.
Exactly, exactly. One of the other things that I think a temptation for parents is, well, it's so much easier for them to buckle themselves. It's also much easier for them to unbuckle themselves. And with a seatbelt, as if you were an adult. So remind yourself, when you're driving or when you're sitting as a passenger, you're able to lean forward and grab something off the floor. You're able to change the dial. You're able to kind of twist and turn. So are children. When they are sitting in that booster seat, the freedom that they have is a newfound freedom. And they don't often understand how important it is to remain in the boundaries of their seat so that preparation for the worst case scenario, they're ready. So I, again, delay that transition to a booster seat as long as possible. And don't assume that kids know how to ride in a booster. It's very coachable moments when you're riding in a booster seat. One more thing about the booster, okay? When you're sitting in a booster seat and that seatbelt is crossing your clavicle, a very big temptation for kids is to move that. They don't like it. It feels funny. So they'll tend to tuck it under their arm or behind their back. That is a very big no-no. If you remove that restraint from your upper body and you are involved in a collision or a sudden stop, you have a very high risk of a spinal injury because your upper body is going to be thrown forward and you will see the result of that very significant. Unfortunately, that's one of our largest injuries here at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital is kids misusing the seatbelt when they're in a booster seat.
Wow.
All right, final piece. Big kids. Once they have gone beyond the booster seat, and guess what? I don't know when that is. Every kid is different. All of the states that you travel in have a law that tells you when a kid can get out of a booster seat. But that law says the day you have your 8th birthday, high five. You must be magically safe in the car.
You're tall.
Yeah, no. Most 8-year-olds, actually less than 35% of 8-year-olds, fit in an adult seatbelt. The more likely transition time ends up being about 11 years, 3 months. So our kids should be in booster seats until the adult seatbelt fits them like an adult, which is a long time. So I have a middle school son who still rides in a booster seat. And not because I'm a mean mom. It's because I understand and I care and I can't imagine what would happen if he wasn't positioned properly. So again, my van, my rules. I would encourage you to find a spot. Maybe there's a graphic on your van that is 57 inches tall. Tom has put a wonderful orange marking on the door or the pole of the van. If a child's head sits below the top of this orange mark, you need this booster seat. That is a key number for when the seatbelt will begin to fit a child properly. So for me, I was kind of made for this job because when I stand up, my shoulder is 57 inches. So any child who climbs into my van, if they're not as tall as my shoulder, they ride in a booster seat. I don't care how old they are. I don't care what grade they are. My poor daughter has a friend who's a sophomore in high school that is forced to ride in a booster seat in my car. Let's be honest. I don't drive her around much because she doesn't like it. But the reality is, we want to protect these kids. So if we can make a spot or a marking or something that says, hey, in our vehicle, if you're shorter than this mark, you'll be using the booster seat to keep yourself safe.
That's a very good point. Just like at Cedar Point, you'll have the little
Exactly.
finger.
57 inches.
57
Yep.
inches.
So I would also encourage you in this training to pull up a video, the Office of Highway Safety Planning. So it's ohsp.gov. They just did exactly what you're talking about, a video about roller coasters and talking about how some kids are made for rides and some kids aren't. But this ride is the most important. It's a great collaboration. So I'd pull that video up. It's a really great video for you guys to see.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So I think, Tom, what we've done here is just very quickly looked at the different stages of car seats, We've talked about making sure we delay transitions. We don't want to rush kids to graduate from stage to stage. And we've talked about how to harness them in the vehicle, in the car seat correctly. But there's a whole nother piece. And I think that's the part that is the most scary to parents, to grandparents, and just to drivers. So let's head outside and take a look in the van.